Hey guys, how's it going? It's Danconia and welcome back to the Overwatch League Roundup 2020 Team of the Week 24. So it's been an interesting week this week and we haven't seen every single team in the league, so some teams are going to be notably absent here. Philadelphia Fusion is going to be one of them, who have quite a few people in Team of the Weeks over this season, but we have seen some quite interesting stuff this week. The supports have not popped off as much, perhaps, as we have seen in previous weeks. The tank lines have been actually fairly consistent when you see the tank line that I've actually picked here. And also, the DPS is again populated to the absolute brim as ever. There are so many DPS players that are doing so well right now in the league. It is very hard to choose between them. And I guess we'll see. who I've picked. Anyway, we're going to start off with our Lucio player, or our Brig player. Generally a lot of Brig. We're still seeing Brig right now, and yeah, can you ever draw Brig away from being meta? Who knows? But this is an interesting one, because no Brig player super duper stood out to me, apart from one Brig player. The interesting thing about this Brig player is actually they didn't win this week. So I'm giving it to GENJI of the Houston Outlaws. And I think, wait, he definitely wasn't the reason in which the Houston Outlaws lost to Dallas Fuel. The Houston Outlaws took a 2-0 lead in that match, and in the end, it was the tank line that made the difference for the Dallas Fuel, and there's not much that the supports nor the DPS of the Houston Outlaws can do about that. At the end of the day, they went toe-to-toe with the Dallas Fuel, and at times were better than them, especially when you look at the support line, in my opinion, especially GENJI. He was really, really good, and I think he was better than Paintbrush, in my opinion. And we saw him, I mean, he got a 4K on the Brig at one point, and, you know, yeah, I mean, WM1 and all that, but it's no mean feat to be a really good support in this league. And I think GENJI has really demonstrated some of the best main support play, some of the best Lucio and Brigitte play that we've seen this week. Again, I go back to the fact that I've seen no one stand out massively, but GENJI stood out to me. And I think it's really unfortunate that it ended up proving to be of no use for the Houston Outlaws, considering they lost that match so narrowly. But it was very, very close. And, you know, the situation is weird at the Houston Outlaws with hydration on the main tank and all that, but they put in a very good performance. And you could say they choked maybe, but in the end, the main tank made the difference. And GENJI didn't deserve to be not included in this simply because he lost. That's not fair. So yeah, I'm going to put GENJI in this role. Now, we move on to our flex support. And I had someone in mind from the moment this match happened, really, because he really did pop off this week. But I had two names on this list. One was Fielder. Now, obviously, Paris Eternal have done exceptionally well this week, going in 6-0. They are on an absolute tear up right now, and we really don't know who's going to stop that team from doing what they want, basically. So, yeah, Fielder is there, but he's not the one I've picked. I have gone for Gangnam Jin of the Florida Mayhem. So, I think Gangnam Jin had one of the best weeks he's had since really early in the season. He's appeared in Team of the Week once before, all the way back in Week 2. And this is when Florida Mayhem were not as good as they are now. And I think this Florida Mayhem side would be nothing without Gangnam Jin in that back line, being that constant healing output, being that really, really, really reliable support. Yes, they've had, should we say, an interesting week with the likes of Chris and Byron. Byron coming in, not looking so good on the Brig, looking okay on the Zen. But Gangnam Jin was definitely really good for the Florida Mayhem this week. And I think he showed that he was the best support in that match, especially, you know, up against Atlanta Reign. I think he really shone to, and he enabled his tank line to do so much as well. Again, Gargoyle not standing out as much, but he's able to get work done because of Gangnam Jin, and the same for Fate as well, who I also think had a pretty darn good week. It's one of the better weeks we've seen Fate have this season as well. But Gangnam Jin really stood out to me as one of the best players, if not the best player this week for the Florida Mayhem. So yeah, I'm going to give it to Gangnam Jin. But we move on to our off tank now, and this is a difficult one. There's been some good off tank play this week. There's always some good off tank play. I think we can agree with that. Now, we had the reverse sweep of the Chengdu Hunters who got the 3-2 win over the NYXL. And they owe that a lot down to Late Young, who came in on the Zarya. And he is an honourable mention here. I think Late Young did really, really well. And him alongside Jinmu were the reason that Chengdu Hunters were able to turn that around and get that miraculous victory. Late Young was really, really good. But again, he's only a Zarya player. And that kind of is a drawback to how much he can do, to how flexible Chengdu Hunters can be with him in the lineup instead of Elsa. So he's not going to get it here. Note is another mention. I think Note was very good for the Dallas Fuel against the Houston Outlaws. Again, this is obviously him having a really good, or working really well with his main tank partner. And I think this hurt Meko for the Houston Outlaws going alongside Hydration. I don't think Hydration could keep up with Gamsu in the long run. And it really, really, really told during the last 3 maps of that match. And Note was consistently good. And I think he has really grown, where we originally thought of him as a Diva 1 trick, but he's got a good Sigma, and he's got a good... he's good on every off-tank. So I'm going to give it to Note here. No, I'm not going to give it to Note here, but I'm going to give Note an honourable mention, I mean. Another honourable mention is Space. Space has had a really good week for the Los Angeles Gladiators. Especially against the Vancouver Titans, who they played. I'll get there in a minute. He looked really, really good. His aggressiveness was really good, and he was able to pick up a lot with that Sigma, being that aggressive against that Vancouver Titans side who didn't know how to handle him. But I have to give it to Hanbin. I just have to. He's so darn good. We haven't seen much of Krong this week, really, against the London Spitfire. That was a matchup that was purely decided as J-Mac feeding his brains out on Winston. And again, we haven't seen other big hitters like Fury. We really didn't see too much from Choi Hyobin because it was against the Boston Uprising. We didn't really see too much from... We didn't see Void of the Shanghai Dragons. So there's another big name missing from this week's fixtures as well. And no one else really stood out. So I'm going to give it to Hanbin, just because he is just... The value he gets out of his fluxes, especially this week, has been really, really good. And the damage output he does is really, really good. And his awareness is also fantastic. And he is definitely a candidate for one of the best off-tanks in the league right now. And he's up there competing with the likes of Choi Hyobin, Krong, and Void. But I am also going to stick with the Paris Eternal for our main tank. And this was a tough one because... Well, it was tough because I didn't really see anyone really, really stand out consistently apart from Ben Best. So that's why I'm giving it to Ben Best. But I want to give some mentions to Beast, because I think Beast had some really good shatters for the Toronto Defiant this week, but he wasn't consistent with it. And that's really, really bugging me. Beast could have had this if he'd been consistent with his good Reinhardt play, but he wasn't consistent. That match was up and down, especially against the Washington Justice. And 1 minute he looks great, the next minute he's shattering into shields and he's doing really weird things, really things that you don't expect a main tank at the Overwatch League level to be doing. So that's why I can't give it to him. J-Mac is no, just no. There's been some good main tank play. There's been some consistent play from the likes of Smurf and the likes of Rio. But I think Ben Best stood out in front of them all. So I'm going to give it to Ben Best here. Then we move on to our DPS. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Projectile Flex DPS. Let's do the honourable mentions first. Kevster. Kevster had a really good week for the Los Angeles Gladiators. He was really good on the Echo, really good on the Genji. A lot of value out of him just being in the neutral fight, let alone the Blades and the Copies. But he really did go to town, especially against the Vancouver Titans. And I would really like to see him carry on that sort of play. Again, Sparkle is just really, really good. We've seen him on the Doomfist, the Junkrat, the Genji, and whatever he plays, he's doing really darn well, and was very much a big contributor to that 6-0 week, unbeaten map week. And yeah, Sparkle is one of the honorable mentions. Again, Jinmu, I mentioned him alongside Late Young earlier for the Chengdu Hunters. Chengdu Hunters would not have reverse swept the New York Excelsior without Jinmu. Jinmu is one of the most consistent DPS players on that Chengdu Hunters lineup, in my opinion, if not the most consistent. And we all know how good he is on the Genji, on the Pharah, So yeah, Jinmu gets an honorable mention. So does Agilities. Agilities is really coming into his own during this meta. It's nice to see Agilities back to his old sort of form on that Genji. And we also saw Agilities on the Junkrat as well, and he looked good on that. So Agilities is currently looking like one of the best players, if not the best player at the Toronto Defiant, although I wouldn't say he's over Kariv right now. But this is the reason that Toronto Defiant has seen a little uptake in form. If the meta stays as it is, Toronto can do well with Agilities at the helm on that Genji. But, I mean, Super actually was topping out stats on the Genji against Boston. I have to give it to Super. And the reason I have to give it to Super is because his stats were really good. He actually embarrassed a player that plays Genji week in, week out. Yes, I'm looking at you, Color Hex. And he was one of the best players in that match. And yeah, I cannot believe I'm giving this slot to Super. Oh, what have things become? Let's move on. Let's go to the hit scan, please. Let's move on. Again, a lot of hit scans have done really well this week. Soon, we have seen on the Sombra, and we've seen on the Tracer. He's been really, really good. We've seen him on the Ash as well. Dante, definitely not the reason that Houston Outlaws lost to the Dallas Fuel. Dante's been outstanding in the past month or so, and I hope it continues for the Houston Outlaws. They'll look good with him in the lineup and doing well. Godsby, getting back to form for the Hangzhou Spark against the Seoul Dynasty this week. He looked really good. Leave, another big part of the reason Chengdu Hunters got that turnaround against the New York Excelsior. Not quite as big a part as Jinmu, in my opinion, but still a very big part. Leave very good on the hit scan as ever. Happy looked good against the London Spitfire. Shax looked good for the Los Angeles Valiant this week as well, but I'm going to give it to Birdring. Now, I didn't think Birdring would feature much in Team of the Week this season, if at all. I thought Birdring might be a bit of a flop, but he's really started to hit the ground running. He's on the Tracer now, and he's looking really, really good. He got really good value for the Los Angeles Gladiators this week, constantly in the backline, constantly harassing, and he's in the exact perfect position to capitalize to the full effectiveness when his team dive in. That's why we see so much Birdring in the kill feed. He's in there with his Genji, Kevster at the time, or Mira. He's in there with his Genji, helping him out, putting that extra damage in. He's in with his Winston, OGE. Or OG, I say OG. What did I say OG? OG. He's always capitalizing at the very right point to make sure that those kills are secured. And that is incredibly valuable. And if they can continue on that sort of road, the Los Angeles Gladiators, they will continue to improve. And they will get a higher seeding going into the playoffs. I was really impressed with Birdring this week and his consistency and his positioning and his capitalization on the dives from the Gladiators. So very impressed, whether he's been on the Ash, whether he's been on the Tracer. So that is my team of the week. Jexer, Gangnam Jin, Hanbin, Ben Best, Super, and Birdring. And yeah, I'd love to know what you guys think in the comments, and I don't think Super's ever going to feature in the DPS slot again. Especially with San Francisco Shock's new signing. Hello, Tayo. Anyway, I'm going to leave it here for this one. So, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, give a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.